Hello, beautiful. I'm your host, Nicole Goff. Welcome to the Ecstatic Life Podcast, the podcast for women who want to live fully embodied, nervous system regulated, open-hearted, radiant, and alive. Here we explore the practices, modalities, and lived rhythms that return you to yourself, to your heart, to your body, your intuition, and your divine spark. This podcast is for women who are ready to awaken their inner creatrix, activate their inner manifester, and remember, an ecstatic life isn't a destination. It's the path we're walking together. Hello. Welcome to the Ecstatic Life Podcast. I am here today with Deb Voisin, and she is the founder of Moving as Design and the host of the Architecture of Health podcast. Deb has this unapologetically graceful way of dismantling everything we've been taught about strength, fitness, and healing, and replacing it with something far more intelligent and far more alive. Her work lives at the intersection of biomechanics, natural movement, and feminine power. And what I love most, she's not preaching perfection. She's guiding us back to a body that actually feels like home. I'm so excited for this conversation. Welcome, Deb.
Well, I'm so glad to be here, Nicole. We're so aligned.
Yeah. Well, we already had like a 30-minute chat before we hit record. Got to know each other real well. So yeah, hopefully we save some of the good stuff for the recording.
I have no doubt.
Well, I always love to start with the backstory. This is one of the things that interests me so much because every healer always has that story. And I have read yours. I've listened to your podcast episode where you go into the backstory. I know it. I was moved by it, but I would love if you could give that story of inspiration, that story of that starting point, like where it all got started to my audience.
It's funny because when you're inside of your body and you have the limitations that you don't know if that's normal or if it's just your genetics or your family. So even growing up not being a graceful mover as a child, it didn't occur to me other kids weren't regularly falling down the stairs. They weren't mouth breathing. They weren't allergic to everything. So this is even in the 70s before people were having some of these kind of almost autoimmune symptoms, right? And of course, at a certain point, I gravitated towards becoming a nerd and not using my body at all, watching TV all the time, sitting in lotus. I was like, well, if I'm going to sit around, I'm going to be healthy. Saw some yoga show on TV, and for hours a day, I was sitting in lotus. I didn't connect that to my inability to walk a mile. These two things were not connected events. I didn't connect it to my inability to stand up on ice skates.
Oh my gosh.
When I was 13.
Blown my mind. Lotus messed you up.
Well,
my whole world is shattering.
It's how I was doing the lotus. It's how long I was doing the lotus. And it's my hypermobile hips. And besides that is probably an even more dangerous position I was used to. I would W sit, which is where your feet are turned out. It's like I'm in a Seiza sit where your feet are tucked under. Well, when kids do the opposite and their feet turn out and you're sitting, that is very hard on the hips. So I also didn't realize I was hypermobile and I could fold things over that other people can't. So I'm realizing I didn't have any idea my body didn't have guardrails against some things, and other people's bodies would have just said, no way I'm staying in that position, right? And it didn't, and until these things started happening in junior high where I was like, oh, I can't even walk the mile in PE when they say jog a mile. I didn't connect these. But later, fortunately, a PE teacher made me learn to jog, and I suffered through PE. But it was when I was finally out of high school that I started to go, oh, I like to dance. I would go to sneak into a club with a friend and we would dance around. I was like, oh, I can do this because I didn't realize it's because I didn't need to move forward. That it was easy. That's probably why later in life I picked yoga. You don't have to move forward. You can just be in one place. So it's funny. And these didn't register how many of my movement decisions were based on avoiding the things that were hard for me as a duckfoot. I call myself lovingly a duck-footed, thumb-sucking, mouth-breathing nerd. When I was inside of that world with my thick glasses and my extreme modesty and my kind of not wanting to own my body, right? I wanted to just be a brain in a jar. It was only later when I found somatic forms of movement. I found freestyle, like you said, ecstatic movement. I found that kind of stuff that's very welcoming, but you don't have to move forward. And yet, what are human beings really designed to do? Our top movement imperative, if you just study our design, which I only learned in my 50s, is to move forward through space. And if you think about the psychology of that, it's like also, can we move forward? Can we let go of the past? Can we not just get stuck and afraid of things? And moving forward is actually not only our most natural movement, it's the hardest. So I found all these workarounds as I was a design researcher in tech, which was a great job. I got to complain professionally, stand up for all of us victims of software violence. And it was a great career, but it involved lots of sitting, lots of driving. And I stumbled across some ancestral knowledge. Like I taught yoga 15 times a week at a certain point before I had my tech career. And at the end, my body was just breaking down, and I didn't have any sense of that because I'm hypermobile. I couldn't feel my body was breaking down. And then finally, my knee snapped in a yoga class. But I'm hypermobile. Most people's bodies wouldn't tolerate the distortions. Mine would. And after that, I finally had to humbly go with a friend and try something different. And I learned that the world's best movers don't stretch. They don't do any yoga. They don't do any exercise at all. They just move differently their whole day. So I learned people in West Africa, people in Portugal, people in the hills of Thailand, women carrying things on their head and babies on their back. They do everything differently. And that got me at least away from the things that were most dangerous for me as a hypermobile person, which was all this trying to get attention by extreme back bends and extreme end range things that are unsafe for me. It got me over to West African dance, which, because it's biomechanically more organic and it involves moving forward, and it's older, it let me keep going without tearing myself apart until I turned 50. Then all the things I'd done to loosen my ligaments over the years, it started to add up. But it was interesting. Starting in my 50s, though, I found solutions to problems I'd had for decades. Once I tore my knee in a yoga class, loud pop, horrible. I went to an orthopedic person. That's in the 90s, right? Orthopedic person. They were like, "Oh, just ride your bike a lot, like get your quads strong." And I did, but I avoided all uneven surfaces like the beach or hiking because I couldn't tolerate it on that knee. Well, once I was 50 and I learned about spiraling biomechanics, I got my knee so strong I could do it. I was like, wow, I've been avoiding the beach for 20 or 30 years because I thought this couldn't be strengthened without some invasive surgery. And there it was. I just started to move in these more organic spiraling ways and strengthen in these well-tensioned ways. So I was like, wow, what else can we fix that where we're just settling for struggle?
Well, and is it also that doing those movements, walking on uneven surfaces, walking on the beach, is actually what strengthens those?
It can be both. This is a great question because at the time my kneecap was it could slide around, and part of it had to do with didn't realize how much of a duck-footed walk that I had. That turnout, too much external turnout tears the hips apart. And I was sort of worshiping external turnout, like turn my feet wider. I was intentionally like turning my feet out. Well, we need as much turning in as we need turning out if we're going to move forward. So what really happened is for the first time in my life, I started to train things that turned my knees in as much as I trained things that turned my knees out. And that turning in of a knee is what it takes for a healthy push off of a back leg. And so what happened is once I got that internal, the winds around my hips and my knees, they started to get trained back up. I was so strong I could be on any surface. But to your point, later in my life where I wasn't near any uneven surfaces and I started walking 2 hours a day on cement, my hips were like, because all the repetitive stress. I wasn't using my, because uneven surfaces invite, one of the themes I learned over all these years is things that invite more collaboration across multiple joints. They're safer. So for some people, even sprinting, they'll use their body better than when they're walking because they know, oh, this is I have to use all of myself. I have to organize my whole self to achieve this thing versus falling back into some patterns that might be closer to how we sit in our chairs. So yes and no. At different, I recommend tightening the spirals of the body for almost anyone. There are a couple of really easy tests to do to see how unwound you are from our ancestral possibility, right? But yeah, definitely, especially if you can get the feet to work with you on those uneven surfaces. And uphill things are going to engage more of the backside of your body than walking on flat surfaces. And that's what almost all of us need, is to turn the backside back on so we can move forward.
Well, so I have a question. How do you think we lost this knowledge of, so we're talking thousands of years of intuitively knowing how to move our bodies. How do you think we lost this knowledge so fast?
What a great question. It's very hard to find any evidence of the loss of our spine's natural decompressed state until the 1920s. And that's when I studied Noel Perez's work through Esther Goclay and Jean Couch. That's one of the lineages that I point to often. They look at kind of from the cultural point of view, movement is cultural. And starting in the 20s is when chair design, they started to get new materials and they could mass produce chairs and add sort of this Art Deco, oh, we could add these, curvy metal things. We could do different things with chairs rather than have a simple piece of wood stool or a wooden chair where it was just a lot easier for it to be a flat surface. So starting in the 20s, chair design started to change. The flappers started to rebel and thrust their hips forward to be like, we're so free. Part of, in fact, though, you can look through a lot of human history where some group, to show they have higher status, will bind themselves to prove, I'm so rich, I don't have to move well. That's stuff I outsource to other people. And I'm so rich, I'm not part of the natural world anymore. I'm so rich, I sit on a couch, or I can tolerate slumping all day because, in fact, if you look really far back, and I would love to fact check. I've seen some of the evidence of these things, but of course, guys, fact check these for yourselves if you really want to dig in. You can find very few people in art history that had this slumpy spine that gets stuck. So moving forward is hard. That gets locked. The pelvis gets locked to the legs. The shoulders get locked to the neck. That's really hard to find unless you look at like a pharaoh. Again, they're sitting all the time. They have other people lift them up and carry them on their shoulders to go somewhere, right? They aren't even riding horses, maybe, we don't know for sure. But it only became a mass thing once we had mass-produced clothing and media. And if you think of, too, the flat aspect of the world that where media is, where you're kind of pushing your impression out, instead of it being a lived experience that is in 360 degrees. That's one reason because of this knowledge, I traveled to West Africa a few times to also see an idea of beauty that is three-dimensional. It's not how you look in a photo, because people, they don't even have electricity or running water. So a camera is a very strange thing in a village out in West Africa, and to see that the dance is in the round. Someone gets up and does a short dance, and they're being watched from a circle. They're not being watched up on a stage trying to make a shape that looks a certain way from one angle. So it's a really deep And the bottom line of everything is, it turns out, you notice I'm sitting on the floor.
I did notice that. I was gonna add,
Yeah,
that was gonna be my next question.
and it's taken me a while to adapt back to floor sitting, but if we look even further back at an evidence of the few indigenous people that still exist, resting on the ground has been a big part of human history. And the question is, in cold climates, like, what is it like when Eskimos, but even the structures, like when Esther Gokle visited the Samui people, they're some of the last indigenous people in northwestern Europe, I think, but it's cold. So they have a teepee to go inside, and the fire is near the center of the teepee. Well, you can't really stand up. You've got to either be in a low squat or laying down, or sitting cross-legged, or sitting in a seiza to have a conversation in a warmed space. So it's funny that we now spend all of our time indoors and we're sitting up off the ground. In fact, maybe that's why we have here's other evidence. So in Japan, they still do a lot more ground sleeping. They have their tatami mats. They do a lot more low squats to go to the bathroom. They're resting in a low squat. There's evidence that there's just also still more walking in the culture, because at least in the big cities, they have public transportation, right? So the amount of, was it knee and hip replacements, knee and hip orthopedic surgeries in Japan per capita is 1/4 of that of the United States. But
It's
if
also
you're
not surprising because of diet as well.
well, they definitely have a 360 view. Like I'm saying, it's a messy meshwork of factors. But one thing, if you practice getting all the way up and down from the ground regularly, you're going to have a lot healthier relationship with it. It's far less likely you're going to be startled when you fall, because every time I'm getting up and down, it's a rehearsal for a graceful fall. And also, if the muscular changes, because our bodies are super adapters. Like that's why humans come out unfinished. The other animals come out, a snake just crawls away, the animals come out and it's not that long. The cat walks like a cat, the dog walks like a dog. But a human, because we are still developing our neural networks, we come out unfinished so that we can super adapt. So we have this super adaptive ability. We've adapted to resting in a car that's cushioned for a crash. We've adapted to leaning on things instead of being on our haunches. And yet I don't want to be alarmist, because the way you sit matters. There are elegant ways to sit where, if you even look at the 1940s, you see most people were sitting in pretty elegant ways. But now we've got, with all the computers and the seduction of giving up ourselves,
Hunching forwards, leaning over.
Versus like a Magic Johnson or an athlete, like they could still be very, like active. You can lean forward in active ways. And one of my favorite things is I all the way lay down. I've learned there are times where we're kind of leaning on something and we're still stiff in our neck because we're kind of in between laying down and being upright. So I'm either floating free with a rooted pelvis, or I'm laying all the way down. To answer your question, the cultural norms of life at chair level, where people, and that's one thing. Look at how great yoga is, where people are getting up and down from a mat. They're in their bare feet. They're paying attention to their breath. When I was a yoga teacher, I slept on a hardwood floor with just my thin little yoga mat. I knew, so there's something primal about the ground, and we know infants have to have a healthy relationship with the ground, an honest relationship with the ground, so that they earn the ability to crawl, and then they earn the ability to stand upright and walk. And the beautiful thing about that is we can use some of the same developmental tools to remember how to have a healthy relationship with gravity. Well, and one of the sad things is, even me, I didn't know how much it mattered how the babies were in car seats or whether they were in these weird foam things, because I was a busy working mom. A lot of us accidentally interfere with, we put shoes on the babies too often. We try to keep them sanitary, so instead of down on the ground, they're up on a thing, or we're afraid they can't sit up. Well, no, they're supposed to earn the spinal muscles. So it's and then parents carrying the babies in the front. No, that's just I made every single one of these mistakes. And I knew so much better, but I realized how strong the pull of the culture around us is. A frantic mom, not enough help around the house, no extended community culture. So I would just say it's all cultural.
Yeah, I'm actively trying to change that culture. I run a not-for-profit homeschool cooperative, and we are so normalizing these ancestral wisdoms in our small little culture and the effects it has had on some of these moms. Because I have to say, I was blessed to be so ahead of the curve on this. In the West, I grew up. My parents, we lived out in the woods in High Springs. As I was saying before we hit record, this little town with all these natural springs, and we were barefoot all the time in the woods. We lived on the edge of this 100 acres with a natural spring in the bottom of a sinkhole. We just go and explore. There were quarries. We would just, you know, never wore shoes. And I grew up with this idea of freedom and exploration of the world that is so natural and in line with the way things used to be. And I then took that into my parenting. And so I've raised my children the same way. I have to very much remind them that when we go into public, we have to wear shoes every single day. Well, if we leave the house, every day we leave the house, I'm like, does everybody have their shoes? We're going to count. Do you have your shoes? Because otherwise, my kids, they're like, why do we have to wear shoes? Because the culture says you have to wear the shoes in the restaurant. Put the shoes on. So my kids, they climb trees, they run around, with freedom of movement in their bodies. It's luckily I came with those instructions programmed into me. But for most people, I will say one of my best friends, she is my partner in the homeschool co-op, and she was taught, as most Americans are, that the ground is dirty and you have to wear the shoes and don't touch it. And she came from Denver, and probably you do want to wear shoes if you're walking around in downtown Denver. But it was such a hard lesson for her, and her boys hanging out with my kids have eventually gotten to the point now where they go barefoot sometimes, but it was so difficult for her to drop that idea that the ground is dirty, we must wear shoes.
That the idea of us being separate from the microbiome that we're surrounded by, the whole kind of alludes to the germ theory where like there's this the one bad thing versus the whole ecosystem, right? And I temper my barefoot thing like I'm in a cold. I know California shouldn't be cold, but I'm not that far from the water. It's a wet kind of cold, foggy, wet kind of cold. And from a lymphatic health point of view, like from Chinese medicine, keeping the feet warm is really important. And you're in Florida, so naturally it would be great to go barefoot a lot. And for me, I wear coverings, but that's also alludes to shoe design. Like in Europe, there were so many shoes through the centuries. Even people were lucky they were walking on cobblestone roads, so their feet could still grab at the contour. And then having a thin leather sole is a whole different shoe experience than people who are, the good intentions are there with these overbuilt tennis shoes. The good intentions are there because they know, oh, everybody is putting too much weight in the heel, so let's make it thicker and thicker there. Well, you're not addressing the root movement pattern. In fact, it might even be better if that person had a lighter weight shoe so they could feel, oh, I'm doing something that 10 years from now is going to end up in surgery, right? So
Well, it's also to
design.
address the fact that we are walking on concrete. So thicker and thicker pads
Yes.
because we're walking on a hard, flat surface,
Yep.
which is unforgiving to the knees and to the hips. And so the padding is there to cushion when we really, as much as possible, I'll be that weird person that walks on the side of the sidewalk in the grass. Like as much as possible, we should be avoiding walking on concrete.
And if you're going to walk or run on concrete, uh, yeah, support for sure. In fact, I heard, here's a funny thing. A marathon runner, where did I hear this? I heard it on a podcast from Coach Gilly of Goda. Um, Apparently there was some marathon runner who either went barefoot or had minimalist shoes and did very well at a marathon. And people were like, oh, that's the thing. We should all, let's all do low support or no support shoes. He, as far as I know, that person never ran a marathon again. It could be that going with no support when you're not ready for it and you're on a hard surface, that could, and this also points to adaptation, right? You're raising children who are adapting, and you adapted over many year period. So if we think in terms of what's lasting and durable and has longevity, we're going to adapt. Like it took me a while to adapt from living at chair level to at least spending more and more time at ground level. And we all need to be, it could be that my back is so tight, I start sitting on the ground and I herniate a disc because I'm not ready for it, right? So I think too, the interesting thing about our feet, besides our hands have 27 bones each, our feet have 26 bones each. So they're almost the same except for an extra bone in the thumbs. So if you think about how much dexterity we really could develop with our feet, and we have 200,000 nerve endings in each foot. So there's a lot of postural information coming from our feet. And when that's dulled, it's easier for us to just numb out and miss the upstream benefits of all the muscles above. Yeah.
Yeah, I credit that my kids only wore moccasins too when they were babies and learning to walk. I would never let my kids wear any thick soled shoes because now they are so dexterous. Like my my kids climb on everything, and their feet. We say we have monkey toes. I modeled because a lot of times I had like babies on my back, and maybe another one in my arms, and I modeled picking things up with my feet. I can open doors with my feet.
Wow.
Yes. So now all my kids have picked up on this, like using your feet in a totally different way
And
than most people do.
if you look, what I learned from Esther Gokle, that if you look at old statues from like Rodin, what is that, the 1800s, they used construction workers and dancers as their models. And if you look at the bottom of a foot, it'll have like six-pack abs. Like the bottom of a healthy foot has many layers of muscle, and that's natural padding that's going to serve someone really well. Like when you have as dexterous and muscular feet, and yet most of us need to work towards restoring the strength in our feet. And the best way for nerds like me, because duck foot shows weak feet, very weak, and bunion and duck foot and flat feet, all that. The restoring the way the ankles rotate and the hips rotate, there are ways to use your whole body weight to retension the foot instead of these isolated, like squeeze your toes, do this. And maybe that's one reason a lot of people aren't getting stronger feet, is there are some bad instructions out there. Like if I just sit here and I lift my big toe and I lift my little toes and I still wear tight shoes, it's not going to work. If I don't have a lot of resistance and use my full body weight to retension my foot, again, I'm not going to catch up on all that lost time of building those muscles. And I like what you're saying, like the dexterity, doing things with your feet and climbing things and walking on the beach and feeling the sand in your feet, as long as you're ready for that. I do not like it when people get excited and go, I'm just going to go sprint on the beach barefoot. And I'm like, that's a pretty challenging thing if you're not trained up for it, right? If you're used to flat surfaces, you're not used to sprinting, you're not used to being barefoot, all of your instability is going to show up all at one time. And so I prefer to help people, pick how much, and the cool thing is with just looking at a few ancestral postural standards, like a deep squat, a forward fold, standing, walking, and running, you can pretty much you can predict what areas of weakness there are in the body that need to be shored up before they could start aiming at an ancestral standard. And ancestral standards in running would be people, when they were just aligned, there are those people in Mexico that were running hundreds of miles, right? And even the women in the skirts that can run long distances, but those are bodies that have tension to recycle gravity. They're not, and it's almost a spiritual idea that you being a vessel that things come through, instead of you're like having to grasp at it and get it and make yourself do it. No. Don't make yourself do stuff. Create an environment where it's going to feel good.
Yes, you brought up two things that I definitely want to touch on. One, and we'll go to this one second, is the running in skirts, which is how I found you. But two, so this is a question that I had in mind to ask you. I have always had a hard time touching my toes. So you mentioned forward bending. So what does that say about me? I have very limited flexibility in that way. And if I don't work at it, it gets to the point where I'm like really, really tight, my hamstrings and everything. Like I'll be like, 6 inches from my toes if I don't keep up with it. So what is that? What am I doing wrong?
Oh, this is the juicy issue. And you've got a background in yoga, dance?
Well, so I don't have a background formally in yoga. I don't have a background formally in dance. I have done a lot of yoga. I have informally taught yoga.
Cool. I love informal.
I love my homeschool co-op.
Yeah, I'll peer review your yoga practice here. It's awesome. I overtrained, and it still didn't. I didn't listen to myself enough. So I love listening to yourself. And one thing in general about a forward fold is that is supposed to represent, it's the position of the way the femur, the thigh bone, the position of that resting in your pelvis. In the deepest forward fold, the knees should be rolling in. So a lot of us, if our knees are kind of resting in an outward rotation, out of safety, our pelvis will stop. They're like, no, we're not going to go any further. So I'd need to look at the way you're doing your forward fold to see your foot and knee position, to see if your body knows how to spin, how to do this safe. And what's happening is when the thigh bone, when the ligaments are ready for a certain task, they're safest when they're wound up in one direction. Like the ligaments wind the other way when our full body weight is landing on a knee. So the thigh bone relative to the pelvis, it spirals the other way when I'm gonna like boom, like if someone does a parkour jump, their knees open when they're jumping 2 stories. And then when someone's jumping, the knees spiral in as you're going up. So a forward fold is representing the inward spiral, and a lot of people need the ankle mobility and the hip mobility, or sometimes it's fascia. But one other thing that can happen is if I've done a lot of just passive forward folds, laying on the ground, passive stretching of the hamstrings can damage them and weaken them, and the glutes too. It can weaken them to then your brain says, the heck I will. No way, I'm not going. This is not safe. So the top thing is your body, your body has to feel safe. Your neuromuscular skeletal system needs to feel safe. Restricted range is because something isn't safe. And it could be, it's a technique thing, like, I didn't even know if I pigeon toe a little and I push my ball of my big toe and ball the pinky toe into the ground and I don't dump, it could be technique, which I teach. Or it could be that, and it could be that you've done enough passive stretching of those things. The body is like, no, this doesn't work. It's unsafe to trap a muscle and passively flop it, because you're going to tear a muscle. So that's one reason I also learned to train out heel heaviness. A lot of stretching systems let weight dump into the heel. A lot of fitness things, because people, sometimes that's the only way they currently know how to turn on their glutes, is pushing their heels. Well, that also can set you up for not having the agility to use your feet the way you need to when things don't go your way. And also, when you press the whole ball of your foot actively into the ground, that's more relevant to moving forward through space. You're really using the front of the foot. Dancers have these amazing glutes. They're using the front of their foot a lot. So when we are, people like us who like to be sovereign, we want to do our own stretching. We want to have our own movement practices. It just looks like, oh, I'll just fold over, but there's a little technique that'll make it safe for you to go all the way.
All right, I'm gonna have to go deeper in that. Although, so I have heard, and now I can't remember the person who I heard it through, but I have heard someone talking about that theory of just the unsafety in the body creating the tightness. And that a lot of times when we're pushing ourselves in these ways, and I can say that I did resonate with that because there have been times in certain yoga classes, more advanced yoga classes, where I felt a need to maybe show off, maybe, compete with the person next to me, which is so not yoga. Like not Zen, but I found myself at times pushing my body past its limits. And the theory that was posited is that when you do that, you do create that unsafety in your body, and you actually create more tightness because your body is, like you said, oh, heck no, we're stopping that. You're not going to hurt
And
yourself.
the crazy thing I didn't even realize till my 50s was once you overstretch the ligaments, and because we're supposed to be working at the muscle level, maybe the fascia, right? We're retensioning those things, but when the ligaments start to get overstretched, it's called ligament laxity, and it can interfere with speedy nervous system responses. Like it can cause a lag. It can cause you be getting worse at movement. It can create interference with your brain knowing where your body is and what's going on, enough that it has to you have to like tighten up in response, like, no, this isn't safe because I don't know where I am. So I do not do any hip openers, guys. I do only hip closers. The most easily damaged part of the hip joint is the front. And the biggest damage comes to it when people are, they sit with their tail tucked all day, then they get up and it pushes their hips forward when they're walking. And then that's really the most damage. But then you take that same hip and you start to bully it with some stretches. Even some really well-intended dance and yoga practices put a huge amount of stress on this joint. I've heard of like 12-year-old girls being told they need a hip replacement. But then
dancers.
they got a coach who said, the heck you will, and taught them to wind the hips back into safety, build the glutes, and like build all, and at the end of the day, let's suppose even, we know I've got ligament laxity because of all the like my competitive overstretching, right? But now I learned, if we bring more of the team online, if we pick angles where there's a wrapping, like there are many tensions collaborating, and think of a rope. The threads of a rope are all in a highly tensioned state. You can't cut through that thing. But if you had each of the loose ligaments all separate, you have like each little filament separate, it would be so easy to cut it with scissors, right? So part of this is finding what is the whole system pressure. How from the ground to the crown of my head. And dancers, the ones who aren't hypermobile and who have great teachers, that you'll see that ability to float like the professional dancers do. There's so much good in dance. It's just the risk of some of the training methods. So what I've learned is, if we look at an ancestral point of view, where dance wasn't a profession where you had to compete to be seen. If we look much older, that's why I've spent so much time studying ancient movements from other cultures where they're mostly leaning forward and have a giant booty. They're mostly like they're work dances. They're like simulating, harvesting something. They're simulating, and they're almost, and the word in the fitness and sports world is back chain. That it's the back of their body is so strong and resilient. They're never doing anything where like a back bend where you thrust your hips forward, and so that's why I choose to study those. Is those are the bodies that can still walk all day. They can still carry lots of weight on their head. They're in community in a different way than the capitalist, and I'm fine with capitalism. I love market economies, right? But maybe I should say a better word is the highly marketed. Like there are certain things that have gotten highly marketed as an offshoot of a culture where the
The crony capitalism.
Yeah, crony capitalism.
Yeah.
But also I have this one friend, Frank Francich, who applied evolutionary biology to movement, and he wrote this book called Play as Though Your Life Depends Upon It. And I love my dancer friends. I love my athlete friends. They're still in the game. I get it. But the unexpected side effect of creating a professional class of athlete and dancer is that at a certain age you're excluded. You're like, oh, I wasn't good enough. I'm 8. My soccer career is over. I guess I better just sit on the bench. I better just go play video games because I'm not good enough. Dancer, oh, you're too fat. Next, you didn't make the company. And even if let's say you make it, let's say you're an athlete, you even make it to the pros. Your career is so short and then you're done. So we've got this huge gap between, where instead of these competitive professional classes of movers that make all the rest of us want to just sit and watch, it's not healthy on either side. The athletes and the dancers will get anorexic or they'll get injured, and then those all of us watching are even though it's beautiful, and I'm glad we still have that evidence, but if we think of other movement economies, everyone is moving more. It's gentle, but does, and here's an interesting thing too. I think on TikTok I had one follower until my running in skirts, until right. I was doing all these, not this, yes, this. Everybody hated what I was posting. But I finally, after some prayer, honestly, I was like, if I got to find out how I can help more people. And the next day, my first video kind of blew up, and that video was me in my skirt running, saying, an anthropologist says we only need 3 minutes a week of intense activity. So, and then they were like, what? Are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah, if you think about all of human history, there's more like every day you're walking down the street to get your thing, you walk back, you're carrying the groceries, and this need to have an all-out cortisol spike sprint. You need that in your survival kit. If you can't just pop up and sprint, you need to add. I can teach anyone to get back to that survival ready, right? But that's different than running really hard for hours a day, doing cardio for hours a day. There's this sweet spot of really easy, consistent movement, like gardening and walking and cleaning and the kind of bricolage of everyday life, right? And then intense need for something when something happens. And our fitness culture has gravitated towards this middle area where you got to work harder because you sat all day in your chair. You got to work harder. So the evolutionary biology the biology though does say a grandma shuffly, really sad looking little jog in a good way, 20 minutes gets spikes endocannabinoids. And walking doesn't do it, and sprinting, what is it? 4, 20, or 30-second, I can't remember those. 4, 20, or 30-second sprints boosts your like growth hormone and all these other anti-aging things by 450%.
Wow.
And we're talking about 2 minutes of total work, maybe. Uh, and so these are all different. They all serve us in different ways. The shuffly jogging, that is the kind that the 500 milers did. It's very shuffly. It's really small, and and I'm almost too embarrassed to do it in public. It's so small. It's almost as slow as a walk. That's the kind that if you did it, what some people recommend, 20 minutes 3 times a week. That little, I think it's the tap of the heel and the bouncing of your lymphatic system, and that you're just moving forward. That there's a lot of evidence that there's the full body benefit to that.
Well, have you heard of the Juvent? It's one of those. So it's one of those vibration plates, but the Juvent is like a
Oh,
much more like elevated version. It's got a lot more research behind it. It's actually like the micro movements that it provides are more scientifically proven to actually mimic what we're supposed to be getting. But the guy that invented that says that we are designed to be walking 5 miles a day. And if we're not walking 5 miles a day, we are not getting these micro movements, this vibration through our body that is actually really required for us to stay like healthy and keep our lymphatics going. And so, that I guess that, the micro movement from the plates is designed to mimic that, but in like a short amount of time. You spend
see,
20 minutes on it. So
it's
maybe
closing the
that's the
gap.
same,
I
the
think it's
shuffling.
closing the gap, because look at because we, yeah, I think that you're onto something there. And I just imagined if I had one of those, I would use it under me while I was sitting around or standing around, like while I'm doing something else. If I know I'm going to be sedentary a certain amount of time, if I could stack, the more I could stack things so I don't. Here's the other worry is
Habit stacking. I
habit
love
stacking.
it.
Do we all really have to become movement coaches like me to get enough movement? No, we don't. In fact, I heard from Esther Gokle recently, one of my teachers, the Hadza, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, this indigenous group, they sit 9 hours a day. They just sit differently. But the intermittent movement, they're walking all the way to where they take a poo in the woods. They're squatting all the way down. They're getting all the way up and down from the ground. They're carrying things. They're getting there. So it's this intermittency is an important part of healthy movement. And one more thing to that vibrational effect, like bouncing and shaking. Shaking in the animal kingdom that's how they get rid of all their trauma. So and then the bouncing, boom, 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 the amount you can bounce and recoil. That's one reason I pick sprinting, is having been so hypermobile, it really helps me wind back up and get the healthy like ground strike that's bouncy. But those could also be practiced just by themselves. Sometimes when I'm teaching a class, we just start with bouncing and shaking. I'm like, okay, you can even have someone else bounce you. Like if your posture is good, when someone pushes on your shoulders, you pop up. And someone can dribble you like a basketball, but that's if your posture, if your back chain, if your hips are behind you, you can take advantage of these recycling of these forces. But when the hips get locked and pressed and compressed, we've lost our free energy. And last thing, walking, they call the calf the second heart. Your calf muscles, they're so critical because the hardest return of the lymphatic fluid is from the feet to get it all the way back up. So, and lymph only flows because you move. So they call, maybe it's even the soleus. I can't remember if there's specific calf muscle but walking and using our feet and our calves is important part of that probably that ancestral shuffle.
Yeah, I do a daily lymphatic massage and then I do rebounding. So I do the bouncing afterwards. I've been so much healthier since I started intentionally moving my lymph. We also have a trampoline, which I mean, you could say maybe good or bad things about that, but I get out
I
on the trampoline with
know,
the kids.
I know. I used to. my son used to be in parkour, and they would train a lot on trampolines. But now, okay, and this is another, like, you can, everything is a continuum, right? Like, jumping on a trampoline is way better than not moving at all. And the types of injuries that happen on trampoline are kinds that you won't. The risk is real, but what the beautiful place that's in between is building my own spring system. Like honestly, when I traveled to West Africa, we would dance on we were lucky if we had a cement surface to dance on because it was even enough and it was shaded, right? And my dancing got so perfect because I had to really use myself. I had to use all my internal resources, not to just bang into the cement, right? So it's the same thing as like, I'm a barefoot. I'm only sprinting for 15 seconds at a time, and I'm bare feet because I can feel better that way, and it doesn't hurt at all because the way I'm doing it is channeling the force.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you about this, and then I want you to this gets me back to the skirts. But
Oh
I have
yeah,
noticed in your videos the machine that you use is curved. So it's not a flat treadmill, it's like a U-shaped
it's curved.
treadmill.
Yes,
So can
it's
you
a.
tell me what is behind that? What is that? I
It's
haven't
right
seen one of those.
back there somewhere. They're called curved self-propelled, and I only learned about it. I had a trainer in one method called functional patterns, and they had them, and I was like, this is so weird. The first time I got on one, I couldn't make it move at all because my pelvis had gotten so parked in a weird place, and so I had to. It gave this subtle, just by whether it would move or not, and then if you lean too far forward and you splat your ribs forward, it goes way too fast. So it was a process, something about, and I don't understand the technology of why it is the curve, but what I do know that at a certain level, it's giving a little postural feedback about whether you're really using your feet to pull that thing. Because a regular treadmill just spinning under you, I could be moving like Igor, and it doesn't care because it's just moving under me. But this, you actually have to put your foot on it and pull it to get it to go.
Oh,
So
interesting.
and that I believe is part of re-inviting the back of our body, because when you put your foot down and you have to pull something back, that's using the calves and the hamstrings and the glutes more than if I'm bouncing on top of something that's already moving. And for me, most of all, it's a safety thing. Like, I just get freaked out. Like, I joined a gym. I think gyms are one of the low-hanging, easiest investments you could make. There are people, there's all this other, there's equipment, and there are all these treadmills, there are stair machines. And my gym fortunately had one of these machines, but I when I was going through my journey, I couldn't film myself, and I needed to do that. But why I said all this is knowing that it was going to go as fast as I wanted. So even better, right? I would be outdoors. I'm going to go as fast as I want. I'm going to go up a hill. I'm going to, like, that would be you get all sorts of benefits of being outside. But in my case, because it gets, I'm only near all this cement to run on. I'm not near any hills. I don't want to get in my car to go drive up somewhere to go running in a hill. So for me, since I also wanted to film because my hips were torn and my kneecap would slide off and I had had a broken metatarsal and all this, I needed to see for myself how, because I told you with this hypermobility, I can't really feel something until it's torn through, right? So I decided I'm going to look at every single video, and I studied the natural biomechanics, the organic movement. That's all the it's on the front edge of all the fitness and dance stuff out there now, and it's the new paradigm. Like, you've been living in this nature-based paradigm for longer than me even, and but because I was using this tool in that way, that's also why I started wearing the skirts, because I was reviewing all of these videos, video after video, and I could only see my failure. I was like, oh, nope, I'm still, oh, that left foot's duck-footed, the belly's sagging, the boobs are jiggling. What's that arm fat, Deb? I thought you weren't having any sugar. No, I like sugar. I actually eat one. Now I'm over all that. Now I'm actually a little proud to have I like to be juicy. I'd rather be juicy than some dried out, male energy. I want and that's what I found with the skirts too, is I was using them to express that the cleanest form of moving forward has some amount of wave. And then these waveforms are because we're dealing with common forces, the flow of fluids in our body and the way gravity it can recycle through us. It's none of it's a straight line has no energy. As far as being able to reuse force, a straight line drains all the force. But when there's a bit of a swing to something, or a drop and a lift, I've got on my website. There's a physics experiment. They show these two ramps. One is perfectly flat, and one is wavy. So the wavy one's much more surface area, right? But the wavy ramp, the ball gets down a third faster. So these juicy, delicious micro movements and rotations that are from the ground to the ground, the skirts in many ways were helping me not only enjoy looking at myself, because a skirt is very flattering. Your waist looks small, and they're fun to move like a little girl. And I would think of like being out at the playground and seeing the toddler girls with their princess tiara, and then they're all dirty with ice cream on their princess dress. They're stomping around, and
all four of my girls.
Yes, and there's something so innocent and strong and fierce and yet still playful and juicy. All of that I was having to find in myself, because I was at my low. I was like, my life seemed to have gone scorched earth, and the one thing I was banking on is, but I really move well. I know how to move. I was even writing a book about organic alignment and what movement to do and not do. I was in this realm for a while, but my hips even collapsed. I was like, oh, even my body, I can't even walk. I was like, so I had to have a solution that would keep me fixing this problem. I wasn't going to settle for surgery. Surgery is risky. Even the best surgeon, and it's worked. It got me into studying many different types of ancestral movement, and it's helped me distill down. But I've been flirting with this area for 40 years. I'm 58. I've been thinking I knew something and then something else. And now that I have both the internal, the somatic, the felt sense, and I have an external reference. Because that's the risk of only doing intuitive stuff. If you don't have some kind of external reference to say, how is this going to work out in 20 years? It might be like some kind of food you have a slight intolerance of. It might be the food you want all the time, right? Like me as a hypermobile yoga teacher, I just wanted to do back bends all the time because it looked good, it was impressive, and I was so easy, I'll just flop back. But was it really what would create the lasting power to walk, play, run 20 years from them? And the answer was no on that.
Yeah. So I have a friend, and he seems to always be injuring himself, whether it's at the gym or he plays adult soccer or things like that. But this has been his whole life. He's been injuring himself. I wonder if he's not hypermobile like that too, because a lot of what you're saying makes me think of him. It seems like he's always got a dislocated shoulder or something going on.
Probably. Yeah, there are some people, and this is a funny paradox, right? Like, the more flexible you are, the more risk of injury. Now, there's a difference between flexibility and mobility, right? You can have a very well-tensioned system where the joints are centrated, so everything's safe. And like gymnasts, there's a little debate about this in the natural movement world, but the forms and the strength that gymnasts, especially like Simone Biles, that they have in their body, it's enduring exponentially heavy loads of their body weight and all body weight in these positions. So they're really making themselves strong in aligned ways, and so they're super mobile and they're very, very strong in that mobility. They've earned it. That's what I'll say. They've earned that. The kind of floppy stuff where our body can just go somewhere and it doesn't have all the strength wrapping around the tissue to put the joint into a healthy place. Flexible people get injured a lot more than people who are tight.
So what do you recommend for somebody?
Learning the ancestral standards. Like even, and the work that I do is called Moving as Designed. And I have also my podcast called The Architecture of Health, where there are all these great thinkers that can distill down, like, the most important thing is if we're making up for lost time. Well, okay, I'm going to say that differently. Durable movement looks a certain way. And I would say the first thing is start to be able to see durable movement. And then you'll realize all those barefoot toddlers are doing it. If you first start to go, oh, there's around the world, regardless the race, regardless the culture, there are these superpower movers, these beings that are toddlers and preschoolers. They can scale up the countertop and they can do all these things if because their body usually has healthy tension, unless they were forced to spend too much time in car seats or in strollers or whatever, right? And that's the same pattern as you'll see in Magic Johnson, Bruce Lee, all the people who were the GOATs, greatest of all time athletes, all the GOATs, they were GOATs because they got injured so much less than anybody else. So these resilience patterns both create more performance possibilities. They also steel you up against injury because that's how you get better. You're still in the game. So first, seeing what does really durable movement look like, and know that it's probably not going to be what you aesthetically think movement should look like. You might go, oh, I remember I had this mentor and I would send him all these clips of movers. Like, oh, what about, is this person aligned? Is this person aligned? And I would be like, oh, for sure, this is going to be this dancer. This is an aligned mover. I'm going to send it. And they go, nope. I was like, what? Oh, they're hyperextending in their hip. I was like, oh my gosh, this looked beautiful. This looks perfect to me. And so one thing is a lot of track and field, sports that move forward more. A lot of those people have better alignment. But why would I say this? So that's the first step, is start to train your eye. And that's one reason there are a lot of great little snippets. Like I have a broadcast channel on Instagram where I just flag snippets all the time of healthy, 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 healthy. Like, yes, look at this, see this, and you'll start to see this pattern. And then the second thing is you start to figure out where your gaps. Like, what is it that you're doing all the time that is either re-triggering the pain or that's setting you up for that pain? And it could be, and for most of us, we can measure that with a movement assessment. I can go, oh yeah, your knee spins like this when you're doing that, or your big toe is shoved in. And then there are just simple things, and a lot of them, then as far as filling in that gap, you start to do these simple developmental movement patterns, like these baby rolls. Like, we're using a lot of the same patterns, the toddlers, that the babies used to earn toddlerhood, and then toddlers, we use some of the same techniques to help us evolve back to where we really have our feet on the ground and we're able to have an honest relationship with gravity. And a lot of it is cutting out rest patterns that are draining our energy. It's not, we need plenty of rest. In fact, we need to be relaxed. We need to be safe. Laying down is scrumptious, but we need to cut out the things that are draining us. And for example, I have a student who I've had a couple of sessions with, and she's remotely. I mostly work remotely with people. And she'd been going to the chiropractor twice a week for many years. And within our first meeting, I was like, show me your pillow. And I showed her how to measure, this is how you know how much pillow you need on your back or your side. And then it turns out she needed no pillow at all. And she'd been sleeping with one of these highly marketed pillows. And then she didn't have to go to the chiropractor anymore. And she was so shocked. She was like, why didn't my chiropractor tell me? I'm like, we have to know for ourselves what we need. And the pillowcase, the case of the pillow, there is an ancestral standard for how the spine is the most decompressed when it's lying on the ground. And if your back is all tensed up and arched a certain way, you need more pillow. And if your body is decompressed and long and relaxed, you could rest on hard surfaces and be totally comfortable.
And so then it's individual to each person too. So there's not just some standard, like use a more supportive pillow, just sleep on the ground with no pillow. It's
exactly. And it's we want to always have an adaptation ramp that uses, and I keep telling my students, we're in Team Tortoise. I would rather get that 1% sneaking up that compounds, and then before something changes. And if you think about it, we first need to look at what are we already doing the most. Well, if we're already sitting the most, we need to own our sitting game. Like if that's the movement we're doing the very most, well, besides breathing,
well, and
right?
So many people, like, we're in our cars. I mean, I know even me, like, I work on the computer, and then like I said, I live out in the middle of nowhere. So it takes me 45 minutes to go to the grocery store, So I'm in my car a lot, kids, they go to karate, they go to tutoring, they go, so I'm doing a lot of driving around. So is there I want to say like a hack. I know you just
yes,
it's the turtle race, but is there like a one thing that most people could be doing?
Actually is. Now, I'm going to focus on car because that's the easiest, I think. When I started driving 3 hours a day, because I lived in the mountains and I had a job where I was also commuting and I had my son's activities, I was in my car all the time. And I got an inch taller because I was on that car sitting game. I was like, well, I see this is what I'm doing. I can either complain about it all day or I can do something about it. And so I learned this from the Go Clay method. There's this stretch sit cushion thing. And there's a little bit of finesse to figuring out how high to put it. But it's just this I have on my website, I have a page called Things I Use. It's this little cushion you hang in your car. And the key with the cushion is so the car has its own standard. It's supposed to be designed so that you have the least injury in an accident. So it's designed for the 1% or less than 1% case. That all this stuff, and not, like, there are some cars that deeply wrap you in and you're going to end up super, and like the headrest jutting your head forward. So there's this two-way street. One is they have to build it for the average American. Well, the average American has back pain. So if you have a juicy, delicious, lovely spine and you get in that car, the car is saying, oh, you need to be more like the back pain people, right? So know that if you want to be free, you can't be normal. If you want to be free, you can't be normal. So you need to have your point of view to say back. And that's one reason I call all this moving as design. All design has assumptions, right? There are assumptions built into that car. And every car is a little different. But what Esther Goclay did is, some of the car headrests jut the head forward. So this cushion, the other thing is people started to put these lumbar arches that were also sometimes compressing our spine. And we're like, no, the support needs to be up higher. so that my spine just gets longer. So her design is beautiful, and it goes basically below my shoulder blades, and it gives, I'm going to use Team Tortoise, it gives my little tortoise shell something to lean into so that my upper back can be like this, wide open while I'm driving. And every car is a little different, but in a very short video call, I could coach someone, and it's like a $50 or $60 cushion, but think of think of the returns on that investment. How many hours could you possibly be breathing better and expanding your body instead of out of resignation? Oh, I guess I'm just gonna get. And I've also taught some of my students. One of my biggest breakthroughs when I tore my hip doing something healthy. When I tore it again doing something healthy. In fact, I was doing something I knew not to do. I was like, maybe that book I wrote about not opening your hips too wide, maybe I was wrong. I'm in a dance class. I'm going to try it. And I did it, and I heard a loud pop. And I was like,
oh no.
Oh, I was right. I should have trusted myself. So, but that time I was on my way somewhere, and it had torn so bad I was crawling, and it's funny. But I used it. I was like, I'm going to use this. I'm going to figure this out. And I was in my car, and I got caught in traffic. I had to go somewhere. I was stuck in traffic for half an hour. I was actually heading to see if someone could help me, who's a personal trainer. I was like, I am so hurt, right? And I was on my way. I was like, oh no, I'm in the car. This is what kills my hip the worst. And I heard myself. I was like, oh, this is what kills my hip the worst. So then I used that time stuck in traffic to I unwound my hip. I pushed differently in this foot. I pulled with this foot. I got longer here. I unwound here. And then I did all this breathing that I'd learned, which I also teach my students, this specific repressurizing breath. And then when I, half an hour later, arrived at my trainer where I had thought I could hardly limp to get in, I got out and sprinted.
Wow.
I got out because I was like, oh, the root imbalance in my hip was from mountain driving 3 hours a day. The root cause. So there are all these things we can do. We don't need to settle for being normal. We can find ways to infuse life in almost anything, whether it's how I'm doing the dishes, whether it's sprinting, and people, it's funny, because the only thing that ever got attention that I posted is me sprinting in skirts. They think, oh, that's what you teach. You teach sprinting in skirts. I'm like, no, I actually teach the economy of movement, that like we're moving all the time. Exercise is a blip. Movement is all the time. Even a rest is pre-movement. So I can't remember about why we said all this.
Oh, I don't know, but
yes.
Driving, yes.
Stretch, sit, cushion, yes. With making sure that you get it in the right place. Yes, very good investment.
Yeah, and that's on your website. And that actually, we are over our hour. This has been so freaking fascinating. And I feel like if I could go on for another hour because you're teaching me so much. So, but this seems like a good place to wrap up.
It's a good place to wrap up.
Where would people go? How do they find you? What is your website? If they want to get the cushion and learn more and work with you, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, I need a session. I know, I'm like, I gotta video
and
myself.
I'm experimenting with 20-minute long privates so that we just get more boom, boom, boom. Just get a small win. It doesn't have to be gigantic. I also offer 10-week where we more methodically go from the ground, and we look at each big piece and have the retensioning exercises. But I'm mobile, not flexible. I'm mobile. I'm just kidding. But my website is called movingAsDesigned.com, and I have a link to my podcast in there. I have a link to my Instagram broadcast group that's free in there. And in my podcast, I have several conversations with people who are visionaries in natural lifestyle and natural movement.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I need to join your private chat, and yeah, because this has got me thinking. And so I have one more question before we wrap up. Do you start with the problem with the pain and move from there, like, or how
Great
do you?
question. Great question. Almost everyone who's willing to spend any money has some kind of pain, right? Like, and honestly, if I hadn't gotten so wrecked that I could barely walk, I would have never gone to the extent that I have, right? But now I want to help everybody. And I mean, and yet it doesn't have to be that. It can simply be, I want to be my best, or I want to make sure that none of the things that I think are healthy that I'm doing every day are reversing me. I like to, like, we use the words, you and I are both very in the sovereignty way of living. And
Absolutely.
part of what I give my students is their own way to evaluate. Like, there are a couple of range of motion, check a couple of range of motion things. Like, it could be that, for example, your ecstatic dance, it could be it completely aligns you. You could have this sense, oh, I like doing this. And you could actually measure, oh, my hip rotation, my shoulder, everything got better just doing that thing. Improv theater does that for me. I don't have to think of a list of 50 exercises. On the other hand, it could be something that you're just doggedly doing. It might even be the hours a day you could be wearing a weight vest, walking hours a day. That could be the exact, it could be wrecking you. So I like to give people the tools so that they could not only start to see, but they can measure in themselves, because you can't, whatever your baseline is, anything off of that is going to feel weird. And is that a good weird or is that a bad weird? And I want people to be able to tell before they're dependent upon an emergency medical system, before they have to outsource their power to someone else.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. Amazing. I have loved this conversation.
I love it too. Thank you. I love what you're doing with all those barefoot kids.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I wish you were in Florida here. I didn't invite you to an ecstatic dance. I'm hosting one this Sunday.
Well, the next time I'm in Florida, I'll definitely have to reach out.
Do. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Deb. It was so nice talking
Nicole.
with you.
Oh, it's so great. Have a beautiful day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you. Want to dance with me? Go deeper with me? Have me in your back pocket, literally? Join the Ecstatic Life Academy on the Go Collab app. Link in show notes.